morning. My name is Barbara Hawk, and today we have the privilege of interviewing Joanne Crain-Lickfield. Today is Saturday, January 19th. Good morning, Joanne, and thank you for coming.
Good morning, Barbara.
It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
So, can you tell us about your birth in Laurel Springs and your parents and siblings?
Yes, I was born in the Cooper Hospital in Camden, New Jersey, and most of my years actually were in Laurel Springs. My parents are Walter L. Crane and Betty J. Townsend, and I had come from a family of 5. I have sisters Phyllis and Madeline, my older sisters. My brother Walter was a twin, and my mother also had, his brother was Albert, who passed away at 7 hours old when he was born, unfortunately. And I'm the youngest of the 5th child of the Crane family. And my father actually was born in the Camden area and lived in various parts of the state, and mostly Vincenttown area. And my mother actually was born in town as well, in the home that is now Rich Zimmerman's home. She was born 2 houses down from the Borough Hall.
Oh, cool.
It was very neat. And back in March of 1924, my mother was born right there in that house, so it's interesting, her roots. And she had spent most of her childhood in Laurel Springs. Went to Laurel Springs School as well, the same as I did. And she then moved out of town. She was sad to have moved out, but the family moved to Philadelphia when she was 14. And she spent some of her years in Philadelphia, and then was back to Haddon Heights and then back to Stratford, and then eventually was back to Laurel Springs again. So she was happy to be back.
And where did she go when she came back? What house?
She actually lived on Glen Avenue in what was the McGowan house up the street next to Desk Camps on the corner on Glen Avenue, on the opposite side of the street, on two houses down from Stone Road. And she had lived there, and my father actually came down from Camden, bought the house, our Glen Avenue home, in 1946, November of 1946. And when he came down, the realtor brought them down, and it was like being in the country to them. They thought it was just spectacular. You know, the town was beautiful. Right. So he bought the house and was there with the 2 girls, with his 2 daughters, my sisters Phyllis and Madeline. And actually, the story of it goes that my mother, when she was living in the McGowan house, because she would go down the street a lot to see Aunt Doris, who lived on the corner. Aunt Doris and Uncle Burnett Backs were on the corner of Glen and Locust there on the other side, and she'd walk down frequently. And my father apparently had his eye on her for a while, and he wanted to catch a little glimpse of her, and he came racing down the stairs and at the Glen Avenue home, fell over a chair trying to get to the window to see her. And that's what Grammy had told me, that he was just, I said, well, I guess if you're head over heels, falling head over heels for somebody, you're going to fall head over heels over a chair to try to see. And they started to date, and then they were married in September of 1951. And so there was many happy years that they had there.
Yes.
My father, for the most of his years, his employment, he was a machinist for RCA in Camden.
Oh, okay.
So he was very much involved with making a lot of, and they made all type of different parts for things. He had made parts for the Apollo missions, some of the parts for the Apollo spacecrafts.
Oh, wonderful.
And he enjoyed that. My mother, before she had gotten married, had worked for Acme Markets in Philadelphia, and then when she had the children, then she had retired from that and was basically a homemaker for most of her years until she went back to work when we were in high school. I still have many family members and cousins in town. The Baxes, the DiDonatos, the Kembles, the Hardings, the Roneys, the Bocas. They're all my cousins, and they're all scattered throughout the town.
Which is pretty nice, you know, that most of us were able to stay.
Yes.
We didn't leave after we got married, yeah.
Yes.
And how about going to school? What are your memories of Laurel Springs School?
And I can, should I do my earliest memories?
Yeah.
I have that too.
Sure.
And in the house, it was just a joy being at the Glen Avenue house. We loved we loved being there. Family birthday, Christmas, Easter. In the winter, I remember watching my dad, and he'd shovel coal into the coal heater.
Oh, right.
And seeing the coal truck back into the yard, and you know, you'd hear the coal all clattering down into the basement. They had the coal bin down there. So that's we always got threatened that Santa would put coal in our stocking if we weren't good. It was right there, handy. So, but and in the basement we had a lot of play areas that we had in the house, because it being warm down there because of the coal heater.
Right.
And the attic, any place that I could find a little nook to play, we could occupy ourselves and had a ball. Dad outside with the mower all the time, or on the swings, and he had built a little playhouse that looked like a little log cabin. We had that when we were small. That was mostly when I was smaller. It was starting on its way out. By the time I was growing up, it got old. And there was a tree house that we had too. Then after that, my dad had built that for us, and go up there in the summer and just be up there doing whatever with the paper dolls or the coloring books, and that's when kids knew how to occupy themselves.
True.
And Mom hanging out the wash. I remember that a lot. And you'd hear that pinching sound because the clothesline was hooked to the house, so you hear the pinch, pinch, pinch
right.
of the clothespins. And summer nights, just sitting on the sun porch or sitting at our little picnic table. They had it inside for us, out of the weather, and going outside catching the lightning bugs in a jar. That was one of the big things. Going over to visit Nana and Aunt Doris and Uncle Burnett across the street, and she was back and forth between the two homes. Nana was during her years. She'd be with Mom and Dad, and then Aunt Doris would take care of her for a while too. Taking walks with my dad is what I really remember too, and the dog down at the end of Glen Avenue where it meets Lakeview. Mm-hmm. The houses weren't there. It was the Glen.
Yes.
You went down to the Glen, and you go down in there. There was a stream, and walking on the logs and getting box turtles, finding the box turtles.
I forgot about the box turtles.
Remember the box turtles? Yeah, you don't see them anymore.
No.
I don't know what ever happened, but and the one thing I specifically the 6 o'clock siren.
Oh, right.
It was down on the end of Glen, also by the McGovern house across from the Glen. Every 6 o'clock at night, the 6 o'clock siren would ring, and it was interesting. It was neat. For our neighbors, that was also interesting. Behind us on Beach Avenue, there's Ruth and Herb Conrad, which he was the beverage distributor, and I believe one of his businesses was right across the street where the paintball place is now, across from where the gas station was. B and Mike D'Alessandro, and we called her Aunt B. She was my hairdresser. She was on the corner of Beach. Their property backed up to the corner of ours. She had the hairdresser shop there in the front of her place, and there they had their girls. And Elsie Tarazi was also on Beach. She was catty-cornered the other way from us, and the Spaiths. Can't remember a lot of the first names of Spaith and the other folks. Glen Avenue, there was the Bax family, which of course that was my cousins, Aunt Doris and Uncle Burnett. And then right across the side street from them was Betty and Al Bax, which was Nancy and Robert's father and mother. And Al, I believe he did a lot with signs.
Yes, he did.
He did signs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember Betty too much. I believe that I was young when they lost Betty.
Yes, right.
And but I do remember Al. That was Uncle Burnett's brother.
Right.
Grace and Ted Lizer, the Lizer family, and there was Paul and Raymond and Tina, and Robert and Matey Mick next door the other way, our dentist. He was the only dentist that I ever had, and Mary and Bill McGovern were also right on the side street, right there at Glen and across from Lizer's. Joe Droud, which was across the street. I don't remember a real lot about him. I was pretty young, in the brick house directly across from us.
Oh, okay.
And he had a greenhouse at the time that was in between Bonnie's house and now there's a house in there now, but that was on a separate lot. And he would grow plants and things, and back in the day, I don't know if it was, it might have been accidental that caught fire, but it was kind of like a fire drill thing. The greenhouse went up, and all of a sudden we see these reflections of light, and everybody gathered on our terrace watching the fire department put the greenhouse out. It was somewhere in the 60s. I don't really remember exactly when. Torty and Al McKeever were across the street, and Al was one of the fire chiefs, and Aline, their daughter. The Thompsons were up the street next to that, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. There was Mrs. Rankin. She was, I believe, a seamstress. I don't remember a lot. I don't remember her first name. I remember going up to visit her. She'd always give you a little cup full of chocolate chips to eat.
Oh my goodness!
A little,
How nice.
little tiny.
Now we wouldn't let our kids do that.
Yeah.
Go to other houses and take stuff.
Yeah, and she would just give it to you. You know, we didn't go begging to her. She'd say, "Have some chocolate chips."
Aww.
Mrs. Brierly, she was on the corner house up at Glen and Stone. She was a nice. After I had lost my grandma, she was kind of like a grandma figure to me. I remember going up to visit her, and I'd go sit with her and talk. And Ruth and Al Descamp were up on the corner also of Stone, and the McGowans, and that about covers. We knew everybody in that entire block back then. And my first memories, I guess, would be meeting my best friend, Noreen Boyle. She lived on Walnut Avenue. She was just 5, and she came walking up into the yard, and she's my hairdresser to this day now. We went all through school together.
Oh.
Yeah, she still does hair. Her parents are down in West Virginia now. But, that was my second home, being there. We were together always, and we've been best friends since the age of 5.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's
such
neat.
nice
and
memories.
She lives in Atco, so she's not that far away now.
No.
Another memory going to my first day of school, which the school had a lot of memories, and the milk, the bread, and the vegetable deliveries. We would have the Freihoffer bread, and then the Charlie Clark, the milkman. And then there was Mr. Weisman, who had the vegetable truck. And
Was that what his name was?
Yeah, Mr. Weisman. Yeah. And he would have vegetables and all kinds of other things. I think even some fresh fish and things on ice. And my mother would buy different things. I can always remember him stopping with this grocery truck. And so that was interesting. And school memories. Well, I remember... I'll mention the classmates first. From kindergarten, the most that I remember, Lloyd Shaw, Betty Hale, Noreen Boyle, Nancy Collison, Donna Cassia, Mike Cassia, Sue Sant, Nancy Charles, Paul McFadden, Sue Schmidt, Donna Corson, Ginny Fleming, Tommy Schaefer, Bob Hamilton. The McGoverns and the Keers were in kindergarten with me, but then they went to St. Lawrence for most of the other years, but Cecilia was in my class. And then in later years down the line in school, they joined us somewhere along the line, but they did graduate 8th grade. Debbie Betcher, the Debbie Head, Terry McVeigh, Albert Simeone, Chet Atkins, excuse me, Elaine Ernie, and Pete Plumchuck, Mike Vitale. Somewhere along the years, that must have been when his father then took over the barber shop. And we had a lot of good years. I can remember a lot of different things that we did. I specifically remember Mrs. Wanowick and the little house that we had in our classroom. It was like this little house you would go into. The paint easels that she had, where you had the big cans of paint. And paint pictures. And I remember in the safety patrol, and Mr. Lang would cross the children, and we were all on the safety patrol. Just the atmosphere in the classrooms. They just were like little friendly living rooms to us, but it was nice for teaching. You learned a lot, and the teachers were friendly. We would make pictures, decorate the rooms and the windows, and playing the auto harps. I don't know if you remember what there were these things that you strum it with a little little pick. And I remember playing them. Show and tell, you would bring in like a favorite toy. I think I brought in an orange duck. There's a picture of me holding this duck in one of the class pictures. we played kickball out in the corner on the corner of Stone and like where the apartments are there, on the opposite side of where the memorial would be.
Oh, okay.
There was an open area there, and playing kickball during our recess. And even in the older years, because we went up to 8th grade at that point.
That's right,
We were in 8th grade graduating class. We did the President's Physical Fitness Education Program, where you would, and I remember they had a bar hanging across the room where you could do your pull-ups on the bar of the 2 rooms in the newer section. Playing volleyball. I remember volleyball in the gym. I wasn't real sports oriented. Not that I didn't like it, but volleyball I enjoyed. I enjoyed just doing gymnastics because I guess being of a smaller nature, I really wasn't cut out for basketball. I was a little small. Sewing class. We made dresses and jumpers and skirts, and we'd wear our yearbook project, like 8th grade. The canteen dances.
Oh, yes.
That was fun because we mainly were a 60s generation. From 61 up to 70, I was in grade school. So the Beatles, dancing to all the 60s music at the dances. And
at the Court Mansion, right?
Yes. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was in the gymnasium. I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
I think it was in the school gym. That's where we had it.
Because when we did it, we did it at the Court Mansion.
Yeah, I think it might have switched over to the gym.
Now, who was in charge of the canteen then? Do you know? Because Mrs. Walker was it originally, John Walker's mom.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And then I don't know who was like in your office. Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, but that was fun. Because it was funny, all the boys would stand over there, and there'd be a slow dance, and they would be shy to come over to ask somebody to dance. We learned to do the Bristol Stomp, I remember there, and oh my goodness, it was interesting. It was, and we actually, we took field trips down to Crystal Spring in like 7th and 8th grade.
Oh.
The science teacher would take us down there and to do studies of like the trees. We would take a packed lunch, take a canned soda, and take it and sit it down in the spring because the spring was ice cold, and it would keep your soda cold.
Yes.
And just studying the various trees and the leaves, and that was fun. I enjoyed that. We'd take our little transistor radios and listen to the music, hold it to our ear while we were walking down there. It was just neat in the 60s. I remember our class trip, Washington, D.C., 8th grade. We went there, the various sites that we saw, the Washington Monument and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the Lincoln Memorial. It was fun.
And who was your teacher for 8th grade?
We had, and actually I have all my teachers listed too. Mrs. Wanowick was kindergarten, Mrs. Brownell first, Mrs. Wright second, Mrs. D'Alessandro was 3rd grade, Miss Ohlers 4th, Mrs. Riggs 5th, Mrs. Degodell was 6th, Mr. Connor was 7th. He was fairly new. Mm-hmm. Mr. Meyer was 8th grade, and we were his first class. Oh. He was right out of college. I guess we all thought he was just,
yes. Mm-hmm.
bunch of 13-year-olds. He had a GTO. He would park it over there where Cynthia Walt's house is now, on Grand Avenue there.
Oh, right.
And I guess we must have given him gray hair, being the first class he ever taught. Probably not that we were a big class, but I'm sure it was new for him being a teacher.
Was that age?
He was great. We thought he was a good teacher. We still see him to this day. Our 8th grade class gets together. My friend Albert Simeone, who's one of my best friends too, he bought the GTO from Mr. Meyer, from Doug Meyer.
My goodness.
He still owns it to this day. It's a 68 GTO. Had it all restored. And thanks to Terry McVeigh Wolcott, that's Mike Wolcott's sister-in-law. She's married to Mike's older brother. She spearheaded a drive to get everybody together and rounded everybody up, and we had a 40th reunion a couple years ago, in 2010, and rounded up just about everybody. We have unfortunately lost Debbie. We lost Debbie last year. She was wonderful. She was wonderful for the school, wonderful to the children. Can't say enough about her. She was just the greatest person.
She did. She did spend
a lot
of time with the kids.
The children loved her, and she loved them. Mm-hmm. She always had a smile on her face. I never saw Never saw it, you know.
She was always a very up person, yes.
Right. And so that's a lot of my memories of that. School activities, there was mother and daughter night, I remember, back when I was a kid. So Mom and I would go to that. Or physical outside activities for physical ed. You know, they'd have us jog around the school a few times, running for fitness. Our science projects, reading groups, Halloween parties, we enjoyed that. Even up to 8th grade we did. I remember our 8th grade class, everybody got dressed up, and we have a couple of pictures that we still look at to this day, and we laugh at how we were dressed up.
Did you go out on mischief night?
I did not. And my mother actually didn't really, but I saw all the melee after they loaded up the bank every year. If you didn't have your things bolted down, it would be gone.
That's right.
They actually tried to they took the glider off my mom and dad's porch.
Oh, they did one? Oh,
it didn't land up at the bank, but I think it was headed there. It was deposited on the side street because the kids must have got scared.
Oh.
And it was headed there. So then my dad would chain it to the porch after that.
Yes,
so
right.
it wouldn't, and it was heavy.
Oh, it had to be, yes. There's metal
I'm sure
gliders?
A few kids,
yes.
Because it's an old glider. Something I didn't touch on my family roots part is then I met Bob Lickfield, and I got married, and we actually got married 50 years to the day that my parents were married.
That's right, yes.
And I have 3 wonderful stepchildren. Harrison, who's 26, he's an officer in our town, a police officer. Patrick is 24, and he is a IT specialist in Cinnaminson.
Oh, good.
Kelly, she's almost 20, and she's in her 2nd year of college. She's going to be a math teacher. So
very blessed.
It was a special time, and we felt blessed to be married on the exact date.
Wonderful, yes.
Just an hour difference in time. I believe my mom and dad were married at 4, that we got married at 3. But it was just so interesting, you know, and that they could share that with us, you know. And as far as mayors, in the younger years, I remember Mayor John Hahn, and he was my mother's one of her best friends. She was married to John Hahn, Cass Hahn, and Mayor Woodcock, because I remember he lived on Beach Avenue. Mayor Guy, and then as I got into more of my teen years, Mayor Jack Hagan and Mayor Doris Hagan, Mayor Rob Hagan, and then our more recent Mayor Thatcher and Mayor Severson, and then of course our current mayor.
Right.
But it was an interesting time. The business section, I guess you wanted me to touch on that.
Sure, that'll be fine, yes, if you remember, yeah.
I do. A few, now this one wasn't in the business section, but because we lived so close, Arlene's Sweet Shop, which was on the corner of Beach and Stone.
Yes.
And it was where one of the firehouses was.
Right.
And I think I had heard that maybe the pole might have been still in that building, that when they would slide down the pole.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure if it is.
I think I remember hearing about that, right.
And then, of course, the Laurel Market, Sam and Peggy. And, you know, everybody would do their little grocery shopping down there. I'm sure not the bulk of it, but they had anything and everything you could need. You know, the copper kettle, which Mom would give you $1 and you'd go for lunch, because we had an hour for lunch for school, you know, and we either went home and everybody go to the copper kettle, get a hoagie and a soda and chips and have some change. So that was fun. Artie's card shop, or they called it the newsstand probably. A lot of memories of that, because he had all different things in there. You know,
he did, right.
I can remember in the summer you'd be swimming, and then we'd go down and go get a freeze pop from Artie's down at the freezer, you know, or I remember buying many little Christmas gifts for my mom and dad, like couple little elves that would hang.
Oh, cool.
Things like that at Artie's, just little. It was just neat. And the First People's National Bank, which that's the bank that they did on Halloween, had my first bank account there.
Ah.
Yeah. I remember Mom, when I was little, you know, opened up a savings account for me, had a little savings account, and that was very interesting.
I think the fun part was that we could walk every place.
Yes.
You know, you were able to walk. You didn't have to worry about your car.
And Joe Maloney, the shoemaker, everybody got their shoes fixed down at Joe's, you know, and I can remember the smell of the shoe polish and seeing the buffing machines, and he'd shine up your shoes after he would.
Oh yes, yeah.
The penny candy store, which was down on the other corner, down toward the firehouse. I can't remember the actual name of it, but going in there and all the candy they had, and then Nick Barbershop then eventually moved in, I believe, probably where the cleaning place is now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. Others that I remember that were not in the center of town was the Garrett Plumbing, which was over along Atlantic.
Yes.
The old movie theater was doctor's offices at that time. I don't think I ever went to any of the doctors there, but L&L Electric, which was next to where Bill the Barber's was.
Right.
And then Bill's Barbershop. There was a hair salon also that was actually in the center of town, because I remember in 1970 when we graduated 8th grade, we all got our hair done there.
Oh.
I don't remember the name. It wasn't the hair saloon that it is now.
No.
Somebody else had it, but I don't remember
in the 70s.
who it was. The gas station across the street there where
Tim's Auto.
Where Tim is now, yeah. So that was interesting. My uncle also was good friends. He knew the owner of the bank. I just can't remember who that was. Steinmetz, he might have said the name.
Steinmetz.
Yeah, he knew. And speaking of that, my uncle, yes, my mother's older brother, Uncle Ralph, has a lot of roots to Laurel Springs. I believe he was about 9 when he came to town. My mother was born in town, but he wasn't actually born here, but he was about 9. But lived here a lot of his childhood years, and did a lot of good things. He pulled a boy out of the lake that fell through the ice when he was a teen. Jumped in there and got him out, and then walked all the way back over to home, which, you know, to where Rich's home is now. His clothes were about frozen stiff to him, because Nana looked at him and she's like, "What happened to you?" And there was a mention of him in the local paper and everything for saving the boy's life, because the boy, I don't think the boy would have made it had he not. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, Uncle Ralph and Aunt Doris also played a big part in this town too.
Yes,
so
they
the
did.
whole family. And churches.
Churches.
If you need
Yeah.
to know. I did go to St. Paul's as a child, because at the time my mother was still going to the Methodist church, I guess from living in Stratford for a little over years.
Right.
So she sent me over to St. Paul's because she figured I'd know children. I guess she figured I'd be too traumatized going out of town. And I do remember Reverend Schalk was there. Susan Sant, Lee Wooster, Kathy Tomlinson, Paul McFadden, Lloyd Shaw, and Betty Hale were in my Sunday school class. Lee and I were the same age. So Lee, who's very much still tied to the church.
Yes, right.
I remember Sunday school and going into youth activities. They had vacation Bible school, church picnics, and various things. They'd have some retreats. I remember going on a canoe,
Cool.
a canoe trip thing, and then they had, you know, prayer time like on the banks. It was fun. My girlfriend and I, it was Phyllis Band. She was a year ahead of me in grade school, but she's one of my good friends too. We couldn't steer that canoe for anything. We were into the banks and everything else.
That was the fun part.
Yeah. And then in my later years, I've been a member of the Laurel Springs Baptist Church since 1980. And my mother actually was baptized here, and then she brought her membership back as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so very much a lot of good memories at the LSBC. And organizations. I remember being in Brownies and Girl Scouts. Mrs. Graycheck was the leader. I don't have a lot of other memories of it. I do remember that my mother must have been affiliated in some way. I don't think she was a leader, but she would store all the cookies out in the sun porch. Right, I remember
yes.
all the boxes stacked up, and then she'd supply them to the leaders that needed them in the town. I can remember that. Yeah, and I remember doing softball. I don't remember being in too many sports organizations. I did softball for a little bit. I think I got more involved in high school. I was on the lacrosse team, but I don't think I did.
Did you go to Collingswood?
I did.
Yes, okay.
Went to Collingswood. Yeah, bussed us all the way up there. It was nice. I very much enjoyed it there. Memories of 4th of July. That's probably one of the best memories that everybody has. Everybody just couldn't wait for 4th of July. It was just hometown America.
Right.
Is what I consider it. I can remember my sisters, having me in the parade several times. They made this big float, and they had me as a mermaid. They made a little mermaid outfit. There's pictures probably of me in some of the boxes at home. Got a prize for that. They decorated my bike a lot of times. I can just remember just so many memories of that. And the 7 o'clock, the aerial bomb going off to wake you up by Mr. Foreman. It was like, get up, it's time to get ready. Our family would have very large picnics on 4th of July, and as I got more into in the age 10 range, because they got an above ground pool, so it was 60, 70 people, 4th of July, and huge picnic, everybody, family, friends, anybody, neighbors, whoever wanted to be over.
Pretty cool, though.
Playing badminton. And it was
badminton, yes.
From young to old, had the badminton net set up. We even had a croquet set at one time. We've looked up in the garage to see if that's there. We never found it.
No?
No. And, but yes, actually, yeah, Bob and I still live in the home that I grew up in. We took ownership in 2005 when we had lost my mom, and so we've been back there since then. Favorite memory, I would say, I remember the steam train that came through in around 1968, and it had to stop here to get water.
Oh,
because the fire company had to, because they need water for the boiler.
Yes.
And everybody was just gathered downtown, and I just thought that was just the neatest thing, seeing that train as it went through. It might have been one of the last runs that it took. But it was neat. As far as the farms, and I don't remember a lot of them specifically in town. I do remember the Rexham farmhouse, of course, which was Stratford, which backed right up to sledding on the hill. Probably my sisters were probably sledded more there maybe than I did. That was interesting. My sister crashed a tree and broke her arm.
Oh, gee.
On the Rexham, yeah. And but I mostly remember the winter memories of the lake.
Yes.
Everybody. The lake was so full, it just looked like a crowded street.
Right.
And it would, obviously the winters were very cold back then because the lake was safe. You could go down there all the time and skate. Everybody, cracked the whip and, doing all that stuff. And,
crack the whip, yeah.
If you were on the end, you went flying.
You got cracking the whip, yeah.
And I remember the kids on the Lindenwald side would sled down because the hills were steep.
Oh, right.
And onto the lake. It was a little dangerous, I guess, too, because if the lake really wasn't quite safe at the edge, it usually was. I mean, that would be a little scary, hitting when you hit that edge. And their sled would come all the way across to the other side. They'd come down that hill so fast. But we didn't do that. I don't think we were allowed to go down these big hills, because you could, like my sister, you could break your arm or your hand real easy with a fall.
Now, did you go on Cheeseman's Hill?
I remember that vaguely. I must have. Yeah, the Cheeseman Hill, I remember people talking about it. And the footbridge, that was still there. It started to get into disrepair as I was getting older. But that was interesting, the bridge. And yeah, I do remember the Cheeseman Hill. I guess we stayed more, not that we lived that far from it, we were just a few streets over. Right. But I remember that. And the hotels, I don't remember a lot about them at all. No. but I'm sure that it was very interesting, all those hotels back then, and all the folks would come down. You know, it was like a summer resort.
Yeah, that was the resort for them.
Because they had the boating on the lake, and Clementon Park I remember a lot. Every Friday night when we were really small, Mom and Dad would take us there. That was the Friday night outing, and you know, going on all the rides. I remember my dad lost his wallet on the whip.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
He got it back though. I guess he must have realized and went right back, and it was still on there, but he had just gotten paid, and I guess had his whole paycheck in the wallet, or the money from the check.
Right.
He got it though, luckily.
Yes.
Because, you know, back then, you know, you needed your pay. Not that you don't need it now, but, you know, it was, you know.
Yeah, because you usually only had one
Dad
breadwinner, as we called them, right?
Yeah, he worked, and he worked a couple side jobs, you know, but we, you know, that was good time living. You know, you didn't have a lot, but we were fine. You know, you fixed things when they broke. You didn't just throw them away, like today's society is a throwaway.
Yeah, that's right. They don't make them to last.
Right.
I mean,
I don't think I had a brand new bike, but he had gotten me a used one and fixed it all up and put a banana boat seat on it, and it was nice. It was fine. I didn't. You know.
And we didn't know any different. We just thought that that was a new bike to us. You know, whatever we got, we were grateful for, because everybody else was doing the same thing.
Right.
You know.
It was good times. This town, I love this town. It's still small time America to me. I love it. It's just, I wouldn't want to live in a big town.
No.
It just lots of memories, and I think hopefully I covered everything that I thought.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you ever so much. It was great having you. And we, as usual, we learned something else each time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.